I would like to welcome Declan Meade to Kenny's. I've been a long time an admirer, not so much of his own work, which I've never seen, but of the work he does for the short story, more particularly through the magazine The Stinging Fly. And I was every time I think of him, I think of David Marcus and the role that he played in the short story. And it's rather interesting that one of the people that you did, that Mary's book, Read for Stories, was in David Marcus's page, and that now you have published your first selection of short stories. Can you tell me exactly how the Stinging Fly started?
It started through, I was in my 20s and fairly new to Dublin and interested myself in writing, and particularly in the short story. It was something that just appealed to me as a reader. And but then meeting other people starting out as writers, going to these workshops and in writing groups, and the common complaint was that there was nowhere to send work. And actually I went to an event where it was supposed to be, it was one of the fish anthologies were being launched, and it was supposed to be Joe O'Connor launching it, but he was ill that day and he couldn't make it, so they drafted in David Marcus to launch the book, and he praised the book and praised the endeavours of fish people, saying it's great that this anthology is here for the short story, but it's just a shame that there aren't more outlets. And that kind of gave me the final nudge, I think, towards, along with a friend who just done the publishing course here in Galway actually. This was late 1997. So we both came away from that event going, well, why don't we just set up a magazine? Why don't we see, all these people are complaining about the fact that there is nowhere to send work. Let's make somewhere where people can send in work and just see what happens. And literally we didn't know what we were doing, other than that desire to see what was out there and would there be enough for a magazine. And very quickly it became clear that there was, and very quickly also it just developed its own momentum, which has kind of led me to where I am now, 14 years later, still bringing out the magazine and then also having the imprint running alongside it since 2005.
Yeah, well, it's extraordinary. The magazine didn't happen overnight, obviously.
No.
And obviously you were going to need money to publish it.
Yes.
So where did all this happen?
In the very early days we had no money, so it was just, I was working alongside it to sustain myself. And then the magazine, we were very lucky in that we didn't have to pay printers up front for the first few issues. We could, we sold a few ads. But the friend I set it up with was a woman called Aoife Kavanagh, and her father kept bees, and he obviously had honey. So in our first issue we have an ad for Patrick Kavanagh's honey. But so
is that where the Stinging Fly came out?
No, it was actually Aoife again. We both had a list of possible names for the magazine, and Aoife had the quote from Plato, The Last Days of Socrates, from her studying philosophy in English.
Right.
So that's where that quote came from.
Initially, I'd imagine the print runs were small.
Yes, yeah. I can't remember exactly what the first print run. The magazine itself was very small.
Yeah.
The first issue probably, I can't remember whether it was 28 or 32 pages. Maybe the first issue, A4.
How many stories? 2 or 3 stories?
Actually, there were 5 stories, but a couple of them might have been just more a page or 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're editing a magazine like this, I've often wondered, do you yourself take on a specific criteria for each magazine, or does each issue take on a personality of its own?
I think, yeah, it's very much about the work, so I don't impose anything on it. I read every story, particularly, I suppose. You're just kind of trying to see what the writer is trying to do. And when you read a good story, or when you read a story that works, you actually don't have to do very much. You can relax into it and just enjoy the story. Whereas with the stories that aren't working, you're kind of reading it and trying to figure out, okay, where are they going wrong here? Whereas with the good stories, you're just kind of taken by the hand almost, or and led along, or you're pushed along, or you're brought along by the writer, and you just. I mean, primarily I would see an editor as first and foremost being a reader, but a reader who's in the kind of privileged position or slightly odd position of having been in the position where I can read something and go, yes, I like that, and I want other people to read that, and here it is.
So you're a conduit.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I like publishing is that too. I mean, there's a nice quote from John McGahern somewhere about, you know, his idea of the publishing business is essentially the publishing connects writers with readers, and everything else it's immaterial, but that's the essential core function of publishing.
It's curious because that's exactly the same as I see book selling as a form of art where you identify what a person enjoys reading, and then you put in front of that person what you think they will enjoy for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, and with the magazine as well, I mean, I suppose with each issue, I'd be aware that hopefully we have so many different readers, and that each reader will find something in the magazine. So I'm kind of conscious of mixing it up in that sense, so that there's something there for each.
Okay.
For every taste as well.
Magazine doesn't survive though surely on the stories themselves, and there are fees to pay. How do you fund it?
We're funded through the Arts Council now. I mean, that was a struggle to get there, but you know that's essential. I mean, I think it always will be. But subscriptions obviously help as well. You know, and just to have there've been people who've supported us in whatever small way or big way, but like right from the start, who kind of like the idea of what we're doing, and have helped in many different ways.
When you appeared out here, you came with Mary Costello, whose book you have just published, and which is an absolutely sensational book as far as I'm concerned. And she has just read a story for us, which you can also get on our FaceTime. Mary's journey to this publishing thing wasn't by any means a short one.
No. Well, I mean, I think that's the beauty. I mean, that's why it made sense for us to move into book publishing from the magazine, as in we were helping writers get us a story out there, or two or three, but then becoming aware that there were writers who needed more than that, and particularly with short stories, because it's bigger publishers or the kind of industry perception is that they're hard to sell, and so therefore maybe not worth doing, or they ask for a novel first, or but so this work, and this exciting work for me anyway, was kind of lying fallow. A writer like Mary, I guess she had built up a body of work that just needs to be out there.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of, as a publisher, that I'm in a position to do that.
Just one last question. How much, when you're selecting stories for an issue and what have you, and then making the decision, okay, this is worth a collection of books like Kevin Barry, Michael J Farrell, and now Mary, how much does instinct play? How much a role does your instinct play in the selection or the decisions to publish?
I think it must be instinct. It's just, or a feeling that, I think that there are writers in the magazine that it's clear enough that they can write a good story or a couple of good stories, or I like to watch writers slowly develop, a style or a voice. But, with Kevin or Michael or with Mary, it's very clear that the voice is there, and that there is a collection there, which is a very different thing from individual stories. And so it's few enough writers actually coming through the magazine that we publish maybe 20 stories a year or whatever in the magazine, but it is a much fewer number that you feel merit a collection, that the collection is there. and I wouldn't rush into. I don't. A mistake that people make is publishing too quickly. That is the other extreme of publishing very slowly. But I mean, I think time. Obviously, there's a great urgency about being published and being recognised and having, you know, and being able to call yourself a writer, and that's who you are in the world. But the work is key and really important. So, I mean, with the writers that I've published, I know that they're ready for it, and the work fully justifies my efforts, and you know, deserves to get out there.
Okay, well, long may the work continue, and long may the writers keep on coming to you, and you will get published and bring them to the readers.
Thank you very much, Des. Thank you.